My body cells are made of light. My fleshly cells are made of thee. They are perfect, for thou art perfect. They are healthy, for thou art health. They are spirit, for thou art spirit. They are immortal, for thou art life. Feel how this is awakening the consciousness in you. My body cells are made of light. My fleshly cells are made of thee. They are perfect, for thou art perfect. They are healthy, for thou art health. They are spirit, for thou art spirit. They are immortal, for thou art life. And feel this going into your spine, all your chakras, all the way down to the tailbone, which gets threatened by all these, life-threatening situations. You want to have this go from your tailbone and all the way to your spiritual eye. My body cells are made of light. My fleshly cells are made of thee. They are perfect, for thou art perfect. They are healthy, for thou art health. They are spirit, for thou art spirit. They are immortal, for thou art life. Let this go deep, deep, deep. Feel you are a radiant light, holding this thought, holding this pattern, and let it go deep in yourself so that becomes your reality, above and beyond the news and the fears. And feel at first it expands beyond your body a little bit. Just feel you influencing the aura right around you in your home. You're claiming that space. Let it expand and fill your home. Claim your home with that vibration. Let it fill your walls and all the atoms of your home. And feel it growing. It's almost like easier to claim your space. Now let it touch each one who's listening. Feel that it's a network. And from that network, we can make it stronger. It's a web, a spiritual web for all those listening up and down the East Coast. All of those in this group, a super conscious web of light, and all those in tune with it. Feel yourself united in consciousness with those in the group and those in tune with the group. But holding that like a force field, like a spiritual force field. And from that, first be strong in that sort force field that you're holding it together. We want to establish it, hold that vibration before we expand again. And then let's see if it can expand a little. Holding that thought, it's filled with the infinite perfection of God, Christ, Guru, our line of gurus, Babaji. Feel them perfecting it, flowing through you, letting this force field, this spiritual web of light, let it grow. It's strong. It's strong like a divine cargo net, but even more magic, almost like a trampoline net. It's stretching and it's infinite. And now it's touching the web of the city and all the cities connected in New York and anywhere, New Jersey and up and down the East Coast. And feel that web, that divine, super conscious, stretchy, infinite cargo net connecting us. And feel that it's infinite and responds. And it's going out to touch any souls who remotely are trying to have a positive thought, an affirmative thought right now. And it's catching them in the net. It's helping them. It's holding them up. And we're holding them all up. And feel that from within that. There are divine solutions. There are angels and the masters bringing divine solutions everywhere. And feel New York City lit up, all of the skyscrapers with divine energy. And all of the hospitals lit up with divine energy, and all the homes. Right now, let's focus on those who are serving. Because when there's a crisis, I feel humanity tries to rise to its highest. So that's a form of divine receptivity and open-mindedness. So hold that thought of that divine, blessed cargo net, catching all, lifting up all, especially all those in decision-making now. And feel that a divine consciousness. And even the prayers of the doctors who may not normally turn to prayer, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, feel that we're holding up their prayers and their tiredness. There must be an answer. Help us. Hold that up to the divine, or we're asking the divine to help us hold them up to that light, beyond tiredness, beyond any despair, to the realm of the superconscious receptivity. And feel them receiving, especially those and any levels of decision making. But sometimes that's the individual doctor in his little department, whatever it is, in his ICU unit, whatever it is, we don't want to limit it. We just want to hold it up to the angelic realm, to the divine realm. Think of even the angelic healers who are trying to help now. And as though we're connecting, we're holding up that divine net, we're lifting them up to where they touch the hem of that higher vibration. They're connecting, even without knowing, but their tiredness or desperation, or we need an answer, it creates receptivity. Healing depends on the power of the healer and the receptivity of the patient. So we're asking the doctors and the medical providers and all those advising in any capacity, all those advising for home remedies, all aspects, and for safety remedies, that divine consciousness comes in, and that receptivity also comes into the city, people trying their best to help. Feel this lifting up. And whenever you see an aspect of that, of them living to their highest, you'll see examples. Just think of it as this lifting up. And then by extension, think of it like it's, like I said, like the 100th monkey, it going around the world, touching others who need whatever superconscious solutions come of it. And let's send Om to the New York area, but all areas on the Northeast that are being touched at this time, such as Boston, the greater Boston area, New Jersey, maybe Connecticut, New York State, anything, Rhode Island, anything I may have forgotten. However it's being touched in your area, feel it also lifted up in this divine consciousness. Let's send Om. 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 And take a moment to relax and feel, stay in that zone, send blessings, and at a certain point, Colleen will expand it and it will send this energy to other countries. But for a moment, resonate with it. Let your personal intuition flow, your personal prayers flow right now. And also within this, hold up the thought of any particular areas that you know need help, such as that nursing home that's had to be closed down. Where do the people go? Send all of those things, but we'll have time for prayers a little bit if there's individual concerns at the end. But flow with your individual intuition for a moment, and the grace and the blessings. The instrument is blessed by what flows through it.
Take your attention at the spiritual eye. Gather energy at the point between the eyebrows. Visualize a strong white light coming in through the medulla, out through the third eye. You're going to take that beam of light. You're going to point it back towards your brain, eliminating any negative thoughts or patterns. Just seeing them rendered useless, falling away. And take that beam of light and infuse your brain cells, creating patterns of positive characteristics like power, courage, strength, kindness, love, harmony, attunement. And maybe take a moment to focus on a characteristic that you'd really like to develop more at this time. And just see that beam of light infusing your brain with that characteristic. And then take that beam of light back out through the spiritual eye, seeing it strong, powerful, bright white light. And then you're going to take that beam of light and then shine it back upon your brain and then down through your whole body, through your head, your neck, your shoulders, your chest, your midsection, hips, thighs, knees, calves, and feet. And just taking that beam of light and just doing that several times, just giving your body a divine white light energy bath.
This is from Italy. There's so much joy, but also let it then be like a response, a divine response of God's powers within us. But it's also like within everyone, we're holding that joyful thought, that joyful resolution.
And I'm going to go ahead and share the map. So we're just going to do something similar to what we did the last Thursday, where we're going to just pray for different geographic regions, more in broad strokes. And Mary, feel free to jump in.
Let's just rub our hands up.
Okay.
And just hold it in general. And also, I would want at the end, if anyone has a special area where friends or relatives are, we could, if we haven't covered it, that we pray for that. But let's just ask the blessings of God, Christ, Guru, all our masters, to flow through us, hold it in general for the whole world, and then go through individual areas. I'll have Colleen do it. And if any area, right now I tend to think of the hot spots, but also the fear, perhaps around the whole world, wherever. So pray in both ways, for healing, for light, dispelling fear. Because I felt that when we're praying for New York City, that's why I focused on the doctors and the lifting up, because it felt like it was hard to spread it out into the population to dispel fear, but that will come. As we pray for the world, I feel like we're praying for those super conscious solutions, and to kind of just lift up the burden of fear, almost like taking this big cloud. When the cloud covers so close to the earth, but if you're flying, you go above and there's sunshine. I feel the world in any parts that are heavier hit, like New York right now, you're battling that as well. So here I am. I'm praying in very broad strokes, but within that, Colleen, why don't you jump in now? And I'm going to stay in this mode of kind of lifting, almost like a lifting of the mist mode, while you talk about different areas of the world.
So let's just start. Let's just rise above Manhattan, send down healing light throughout the whole city. Just seeing the divine light flowing through us, divine channels throughout the whole city. Like Mary said, the doctors, the hospitals, the people who are sick.
And feel it going to all the residents now. I feel more openness than before. Like as though our prayer is gaining magnetism and divine healing. Feel as though it's now going into every apartment. There's like a light going on, a light of spirit going on in every apartment in all of Manhattan and the New York City area. And then Colleen, you keep going.
Yeah, so spreading out throughout all of New York State, going up through Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Boston area. It's also seeing quite a few cases. Spending a little extra time there, and going up through the Northeast, through New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, lighting up that whole area. Now seeing just the whole East Coast vibrating with healing light, knowing that this light is reaching people. And then let's kind of swoop down into the South, going through Pennsylvania, DC, Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, the whole Southeast. And then let's move west, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, going through the whole Midwest, focusing maybe on Chicago, Dallas, any cities where population density is high, and just seeing that light slowing down this whole virus, building people up, having this light make their immune system stronger, allowing it to uplift their attitude, and spreading to the west, go through Utah, Nevada, Oregon, focus a little on Seattle and Washington area. They've been hit quite early in all this, seeing this light reach people and calming them. And now moving down through California, extra light to San Francisco and LA, Ananda Village, lifting up the people to the village as all of Ananda worldwide looks to the village for guidance and leadership. And then we're going to move down through Mexico, seeing all of Mexico lit up with bright white healing light from the masters. Moving down through Central America, also Cuba, Puerto Rico, all the Caribbean islands. And then moving down through South America to Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, maybe some extra light to Sao Paulo. It's a city that's bigger than New York. Peru, Bolivia, Uruguay, Argentina, and Chile, seeing all of South America lit up with our light, channeled from the masters. And then we'll move up back north to Canada, just seeing all of Canada, just seeing white light spread throughout that entire country, focusing a little extra on Montreal, and also sending light to Greenland and the Arctic Circle, Just making sure we cover all the continents, Iceland and the UK, with some special focus on London, where everyone is sheltering in place there as well. Ireland, some extra light in Dublin, and moving all throughout Europe, Portugal, Spain, some extra light in Madrid, France, sending some extra divine light to Paris, and of course Italy, where our friends in a CCR, just focusing on Italy for a moment or two. You're kind of leading the world in this spread of the virus. I'm moving through Eastern Europe, Romania, Ukraine, Lithuania, Poland, also Germany, moving down to the Middle East, Turkey, Iraq, Iran, Oman, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, seeing all of the Middle East covered with divine healing light, uplifting the people there, seeing harmony evolving there, Egypt, moving over to Africa, all countries in Africa, Algeria, Libya, Sudan, all the way down to South Africa and Madagascar, and moving over to our friends in India, New Delhi, Mumbai, Gurgaon, Pune, seeing all of India awash in bright light, giving the people strength in their 21-day lockdown, giving them courage, a warrior-like spirit, and moving up into China, spending some time and sending energy to Shanghai and Wuhan, and then down through into Thailand, Myanmar, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, South Korea, Japan, and then down into Australia, sending some extra light to Sydney and New Zealand, and working our way back up to North Korea and South Korea. Master's light flowing through us, building people up, manifesting harmony, harmonious thoughts and actions, and then up to Russia, sending white light throughout all of Russia, all the Soviet Union, and then down through Antarctica, where there's actually been a case or two, keeping Antarctica pristine, clear, and then just take a moment just to feel the earth between your hands, feel that energy between your hands, just having the earth surrounded in Master's light, knowing that the Masters are here, watching over this time, all of us, and that they're aware of the divine plan that we're a part of, that we may be beacons of light in this time of crisis. Om, peace. Amen.
Thank you. That was beautiful. And I also like the combined power of a group. This is very dynamic. Colleen had asked me to mention something I've talked about a few times. And once in a while, Swami would bring up Edgar Cayce. Just in the course of a talk, he would say, like for instance, I'll tell you the kinds of things he would say that would give some credence. He would say, one time a person went to Edgar Cayce for a reading. Edgar Cayce said to him, to the person, the most important thing that has happened to you in the last 2,000 years is that you saw Jesus Christ walk by. So that would be the way Swami would bring it in, or he would be making a bigger spiritual point, like those turning points in our lives. He would possibly sometimes mention in passing that Edgar Cayce and others had made world predictions, some of which came true and some of which did not. For instance, finding he had said at a certain point, like in the 60s, a pilot would be flying over the Bermuda area and would see, I think, that road that goes down, they think, to Atlantis, the road to Bimini. I might be mixing up, but you get the idea. There'd be things like this, and then those did come true. And Swami would be weaving that into a conversation because he's talking about, yugas. He would say, so, land had gone under the water at some point, probably a descending trade to yuga. But you could still see this road that didn't make any sense. It was made out of big, huge granite blocks or something. And they found more structures, but Edgar Cayce had said it was there and that it would be found. So it was that level of giving credence. It wasn't gospel, but he might also say some of his health things made sense. But it would usually be in the bigger context. Swami was making a point, but he might draw on it. So it showed some respect. So within this context, and also with Easter coming up, I can tell you that this story is all nice. So somebody had sent me a 2-hour YouTube, because they thought I would want to hear what Edgar Casey had said about the Last Supper and Psalm 91. Because I wrote a thing about Psalm 91, the soldier's psalm. And some people have, this would be a good time to use the soldier's psalm. I'll have to put the link up. But it's a psalm of protection. The director of ARE, whatever that means, Edgar Casey's group now in Virginia Beach, I forget what the letters stand for. He decided to be a good director, he should tune into Edgar Casey and listen to all the archives. So that's how this came up. So he had been listening to this archive from a talk in Denver before World War II. And in that talk, or it wasn't a talk, it was a reading, but somehow in that reading, there had been something about Psalm 91, and that he said Jesus had said Psalm 91 with his disciples at the Last Supper, not to protect himself, but to protect them. That only Jesus was going to go through that karma right then. And he wanted his apostles, his disciples, to say that psalm. So if you listen to it in that way, think of that power, and it also protects you now if you're drawn to it. But I mentioned that because a couple of people had asked me about the Psalms during this, and I meant to post links to it. The other thing that he said, but in this whole 2-hour talk, he mentioned this other little thing that was hugely captured my thoughts, because this person sent it to me because of Psalm 91 and the Last Supper. But he's saying, and he was listening to this part, and they were talking about the coming of World War II. So you can imagine, people were thinking, you don't know if it's going to really be a war. You think it might be a war, right? It's the same way we are now with the virus. We don't, as it built, you didn't know what was going to happen, and we still don't know what's going to happen to the whole country. Will it die down, or will it just keep going and going and going? So people were in that little fearful mode, and they asked him while he's in a trance, and there might have been, I don't know, there was a room full of people, not like a lecture hall, but like a large living room, you might say. And so they said, will there be a war? And he said, yes. And the whole room erupted into, oh my God, did you hear what he said? There's going to be a war. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And none of them, because he was in a trance, he kept talking, but they didn't hear it. But the mic picked it up. And so the director of ARE was astonished as he listened, because it hadn't been captured in all their teachings. It was just captured by the mic. And now he was hearing it. And he was only hearing it 10 years ago. So they're all flipping out that the war's coming. And he said, yes, but, and the but was, yes, but it could be averted if 20 people would pray. And so since they're all so flipping out, they didn't say, well, what kind of prayer? How long? How many days do we have to pray? Or, it could just be more specific. Nobody said that, which would have been great. But it's fascinating, exponential power of prayer. When we lift above the fear, like, are we going to be like the people in the room, like, oh my God? Or are we going to go, hey, 20 people can pray? Like, how are we going to lift up to that place? Because part of prayer is what we send to it. Part of our prayer is it's lifting ourselves up. Part of prayer is invoking, like I sometimes was doing, the masters and the angels that are beyond, and that they're touching people. But just think of the stories you've heard of, like either when somebody makes an invention, or necessity is the mother of invention. Well, necessity also probably is lifting people's minds a little bit. They're asking a question and they're asking for guidance. So right now is a very live moment. The history is being written now. It's a mutable moment. You've got creator, sustainer, dissolver is always working with the universe. And Master says those have to be held in balance. Well, what's interesting, we've obviously got some dissolver going, right? Normal time, in a sense, has been suspended. It's a remarkable moment on the planet. Normal busyness of time. It's a remarkable moment for prayer. Not just for individual prayer, that's obvious, but I mean, in terms of the world is quiet in a way where it's at least paused. It really impressed me when Europe was quiet for 3 minutes after the tsunami in 2004. All of Europe stopped for 3 minutes. And the reason I really, of course, that would have caught my attention, but I noticed it because I was using my beads. Because when I first heard about the tsunami, 7,000 people had died. It was like that first morning. And I had decided to do an Om Guru for every soul who died. Because they weren't going to get a funeral or astral ascension. Each one was like an astral ascension for me. And I committed to do that. Well, and then we were going to a vacation spot for right after Christmas. The only time we ever did that. When we got to the place, I realized, there were 150,000 who died. And then by the time it was over, it was almost 300,000 who died. And I thought, well, I'm still going to say an Om Guru for everyone. And I would count it on my beads, and I had my whole way to keep track. And so I was in this space. It took like 6 weeks, I think. Well, about 2 weeks in, Europe did their 3 minutes of silence. And I thought, that's brilliant. But once they did it, it's like the energy changed. All those souls, I think from the world being quiet, the souls kind of looked around and they all went up together. Where I think before they've been holding a space, holding a thought with the shock of the world and the shock of each other. And there were so many, I think they could hold the space. Well, what struck me is I didn't even know what to do with the rest of my own gurus, but I had committed to it. So I decided to keep going. And I decided, well, let these Om Gurus be for the families that are heartbroken too. But it felt like the souls were now okay. They'd all lifted up. Well, so this very powerful moment we have now, where the whole world, or like a third of the world for sure, is on lockdown. It's stunning. And India's on lockdown. And so it quiets the vibe. Like, for instance, the ozone layer is already healing. So healing is happening. They say because nobody's driving the cars and nobody's running coal plants for the most part, all those things, the ozone layer is already healing. Think of how short a time that is. All these things that we go, maybe it's all a blessing because in one level, because everyone was all worried, we're going to die from global warming. All of a sudden they're like, oh no, we're going to die before that. We're going to die of the coronavirus. Well, instead it's like healing that, and the dolphins are back in Venice, which I never knew they had ever been there, but the waters are crystal clear in Venice. And then the air is clear over Europe, and the air is clear over China, which is a miracle. So there's healing happening in the planet. So it's a perfect time to pray in this stillness, because as though it says time stood still. So you can see some of the dissolver of the normal patterns. But when you have a big dissolver moment, think of it like a big circle of God. So you have creator, sustainer, dissolver. If it goes down to dissolver like this, the bottom of the circle, it comes back up in creator. It's a time for a big whoosh of creative energy. That's why our prayers can be very powerful right now. The stasis has been broken. So as we pray, it's a live moment. It's a live moment for the doctors and things to come up with a solution. And people are listening. That's what's interesting. Some people have stepped out of their dogma because they want an answer. And I was surprised. I saw this remarkable story of one of the first men who was really sick with this like a month ago, right? And the man said, when he was so sick in the ER, he asked the doctors, am I going to live? Am I going to live or die? Am I going to die or live? And the doctor goes, he just had tears in his eyes. The doctor had tears in his eyes. And then he asked the other doctor who kind of came in, am I going to die? And the doctor goes, I don't know. They were flummoxed. And then the next doctor who came in, he goes, we are not going to let you die. And I'm calling all these doctors around the world to get an answer for you right now. And so that doctor's on the phone to whoever he called around the world, whatever that meant. But he knew who to call to say, who knows?
whose mind is open and knows. And those guys said, get a vitamin C in him immediately and get hydroxychloroquine in him immediately. And they did. And he got well, and he got well very quickly. But it was remarkable to me, that one who said, I'm not letting you die, like on my watch kind of thing. And I'm doing something about it. I'm calling he's putting out that web of asking. And so that's what I mean. People get beyond their dogmatism, like what's going to work for this. And so as we pray, that live moment, it is very, very receptive. And then within it, you also have sustainer. You have all the people who have all their skills, how to care for patients and sterile technique. And they're teaching people how to use that clean technique or sterile technique in their homes when they bring their groceries in even, and how to wash them off and put them on the clean side. And that's a lot of the sustainer. And it's also expanding that knowledge that might not have this super conscious solution of how to beat it, but it's how to sustain during it. And just think of it that way. Creator, sustainer, and dissolver is all working, but the balance shifted a little bit, and it's creating an opening for new information. The other thing why it's really good to be praying, how we're praying, and then also Jyotish and Devi's new affirmation, like a warrior of light. There's a sort of a subtle aspect, and I think Colleen might have shared some of these things, and it's things we would hear about at Ananda. We'd be reading the original teachings, and we'd always like say, oh, it's in the Yagoda, the original lessons. But we knew like the viruses, one statement the master says, the viruses came from other parts of the universe. And I thought, I don't really get how's social distancing going to help us if the viruses came across the universe. But it's not really what he meant. That was sort of like a shorthand statement, because in his longer statement, he says, fallen souls are drawn to a viral outbreak because they can't wreak havoc anymore. Like, for instance, he said Stalin had so much karma, he had to revert back to a germ. So you go, oh, okay, it begins to make sense. And so if our own vibe as a planet had sunk because the air is bad, people are sniping at each other, there's good things going on, but if there was too much bickering, and just think of how the world's gotten that way, and I really don't know why. And if it's the online world creates a lot of connection, but it also kind of filled people with too much that they could always have opinions about. I really don't know, but whatever it is, that whole vibe, Master would talk about, wars especially, but all the discontent, the disharmony can start to have an impact on the planet. Because he also talked about that the vibe of World War I, the after effect of World War I and all the sorrow and death and everything, the after effect had been the viral impact of the 1918 flu. And that these fallen souls were drawn to it just to kind of wreak havoc, and also it's like, maybe it's their way of reincarnating, I don't know, and getting it over with, burning up a lot of their karma. I don't know, but eventually, you know how they say eventually a virus has to learn how to not kill its host. Well, maybe it's almost like those viruses or those fallen souls have to even eventually learn to chill out a little. You don't want to kill the host because you're wrecking all your fun, and it just evolves and it calms down, and the whole world's praying for each other, so that lifts the vibe. It creates its own process of healing. And look at our planet. I mean, it's healing. It's kind of stunning. Do we have the will to continue it? I don't know, but maybe people go, that was easy. Maybe we have to just change some of what we do and some of what we buy and whatever. Because look how fast the earth is healing. Just from everyone chilling out. It could, even if we were all like Italy, they all take 1 month off as their vacation. Maybe the whole world needed a month off like Italy would do, all at the same time, though, let the earth heal. But on a deeper level, because I don't want to glorify the viruses, because Master would bring up this aspect that, the fear and terror they brought. Just think of Stalin, like as an example, and how, because the fallen souls are drawn to it from all over the universe. On some level, they still like the power of freaking everybody out. If they can't own the whole world, they can at least freak out the whole world. That's the way I look at it. So that's why it's right and good for us to go, no, we're lifting it up. Enough already. You freaked us out. You changed our pay. Enough. Let's reclaim our soul nature as individuals, as a nation, as a city, as a world. And then in that sense, it might help, fingers crossed. It might. It seems like it would make sense. We're 120 years now into Dwapara Yuga. We're for real. So is this a transition moment to even be that much higher? It could be. And then just stay vigilant, like that balance of individual destiny, individual freedom, but also cooperation as a planet. There's things in the balance, because one thing Swami did say about Dwapara Yuga, it's everything has more energy. So the good can have more energy and the bad can have more energy. So we want to be soldiers of that light and bring it to the next level. And as you claim that, I do think a lot of it holds, it sets the new pattern. I say this because I would notice Swami's body would have to go through something every time we went into a new territory. Like if he wrote a new book, or if he, went off to start India, any of those big times, his body would take a hit, and we'd all have to pray for him but we'd sort of, by the end there, my prayer would be more like, just back off, dark force. Just back off, get used to it. We're expanding. The light's coming, we're expanding. So just back off. And then you kind of claim that space. And I think with an ascending Dwapara Yuga, we need to do some of that. And because before, when all this was going on, I think I had mentioned to Yashara, who's the wife of Drupada, the astrologer, and I said, if everything was falling to pieces like this, sort of how it looked in the beginning, like what's going on, I would understand it in a descending yuga. You'd expect it to all fall apart. She goes, oh no, Drupada had to correct me on that. He said, in a ascending yuga, you're kind of you're coming on a Kali and you're having to fight or climb, you might think, each step of the way up to the light. You're claiming the light. Whereas in a descending yuga, it's actually a pretty good ride coming down because it's all established. You probably get a jolt coming out of descending Treta into Dwapara. Clunk, where did it all go? But then you're in Dwapara. You come down and then there's another clunk, because they even talk about Arjuna and Krishna. We're at the very tail end of descending Dwapara. And Arjuna still had all of his energy weapons he could still use. Maybe some of the other lesser soldiers didn't have as much, but Arjuna still had all of them. And the way it's written in the Mahabharata is Divine Mother already had one foot into Kali. And then all of Dwarka just went in the ocean. Clunk, and they even found Dwarka. So, and then you have, you go down Kali Yuga and then come up. And then you have that cusp period. I think it was like 1700 to 1900 was the cusp. And so a whole bunch of growth was happening there. American Revolution, et cetera, and a lot of discoveries. And then finally by 1900, you're in Dwapara Yuga, and look how quickly some things come. And some understanding came, such as, the atom bomb. But then there was sort of this understanding, let's just not do that again. Everybody might threaten about doing it again, but we don't do that again. So the same way with viruses and everything, because sometimes there's people wondering about the level 4 labs and did it come from that or not. I was sort of feeling if it did, I'm of mixed mind. But even so, there'd be this thought, like, let's be careful with those things. Sort of like the same way the nuclear war, let's not do that again. We don't know what we're learning right now. We do know we're surviving, which that's what we're seeking to do. And that's why it's a very real moment. It's a very right now. It's very much in the moment. It's happening right now. And that's why the prayers are very active and it's a very powerful time to pray, because once something's more set in stone, it's harder to get that wheel turning again. Let's get some prayers going to so many bad decisions were made, how they handled that. But right now the wheel is just turning, so it's a very mutable moment for a lot of prayers, and that's why 20 people praying can be powerful. And then let's have 20 people pray over and over and over, because we don't know exactly what the recipe was, but we can kind of guess. The other thing to understand, because sometimes if you look in the ananda.org/prayers, so you're in the healing prayer section, I think there's a section called inspiration. If you find the stuff on world peace healing, the prayers for world peace and stuff, I have some things in there. But sometimes we would see prayers happen like immediately, answered prayers on some remarkable things, like praying for the person who was trying to put the cap on the oil that was leaking in the Gulf. And that thing was going on for 3 weeks. And they're all saying, oh, we're all going to die. It's going to go up. It's going to be one grease slip from here to London. And so finally, a little group like this, just like this, it was online. I said, we're going to pray. Today, we are praying for the guy who's trying to put the lid on that thing. That's all we're praying about. And so, can you imagine if you're the guy with some little, robot, trying, the whole world's mad at you because you haven't done it yet, and you're trying to just get the thing 5 miles in the ocean to, go on right. So we're just praying for whoever that is. And we just sort of like that same thing, get in the zone from the medulla. Let's just hold this light around him. He's in the zone. I assumed it was a guy because, I don't know, it just seemed like such a nerd job. But that was just my feeling. That's how I prayed about it. We just hold that person in the zone, and they're totally tuned in. And all forces are assisting. And then we ended the prayer, and an hour later it came out on the news. Oh, they fixed it. Oh, they got the lid on. And in a sense, you're praying for one guy to stop this whole disaster. Well, the same way, a lot of times, even when you're praying about a nation or a world or a city, you're kind of wanting sometimes 1 or 2 or 3 people get a bright idea. And I have watched a couple of I've been impressed watching people I'm not usually that drawn to watch at all, like Cuomo and de Blasio. But in a sense, I feel they're very receptive right now. They want to help their state and their city. Whatever else they ever did that was more like third chakra, I don't care. Right now, they're in the zone more than they've ever been. So it's a good time to pray for any bright ideas coming through, because I think they're very open. And the same way we go for, like I said before, praying for all the hospitals and everything. And then as we prayed later, I could feel some of that comfort going out to, the citizens themselves. There's probably people lonely or sad or, whatever right now, because that's another way to pray. One time we were doing a whole prayer for the world, and I would pray instead of a map, I'd pray for the whole world like a ball floating in space. And I was leading it like Colleen was leading it. And it was when there was a war in Serbia. But I kind of had it in my mind, who's the good guys, who's the bad guys. I wasn't following it too closely, and as we got there, my mind had some polarity in it, kind of like I wish the bad guys would stop killing these people and putting them in long graves, I thought that was fair enough, so, but I'm holding it. And when I had that polarity thought, it was like I was feeling I couldn't have a polarized thought as I prayed, because that was actually adding more polarity. It wasn't helping. I thought, okay, whoa, how can I pray? And I just prayed. It was also a surprise to me, because it was the first time I got such a dynamic response for these world prayers with a globe or a map. Well, this is pretty real. This is dynamic. It's interactive. I just prayed, Divine Mother, just help whoever needs your healing light right now. And then I felt it flow, and our group sent energy. Well, what happened was surprising, because this was in the early days of the internet, early. But I always felt when we do these kind of prayers, Divine Mother would send me a way to see where the prayers went. Take it as a grain of salt, but here's what happened. A couple of weeks later, somebody gave me a photocopy of an article, and it matched the time when we were praying. And some who I thought were the bad guys, had lined everybody up, and they were about to shoot them into a grave within sight of the border. That was the other thing. There's a big fenced border, so they wanted to also bug the people on the other side of the border that this was happening in their view. They all had their guns, and this one person started to walk out from the pack, and the guys go, stop, I'll shoot. And he's like, we already, and just kept walking. Well, later, many years later, as the story circulated on the internet, they'd say Jesus walked out. Well, it's not how the first thing was. It was just somebody walked out. They're probably moved by God, and he just walked up to the head of these soldiers and just pushed down the gun. And then the soldier, the captain or whatever he was, ordered all his men that they were all going to surrender and all cross the border. And I'm like, what? If that's not God, I don't know what. So who knows what the prayer was of that captain that morning? Like, I hate my job. God, whatever it is. They all went to the other side. They all just surrendered. It just blew my mind. All I could say is like, oh, Divine Mother, use that prayer, because I have no other explanation for the story other than that. It was much, it just felt like God used the energy in that moment. And we never know who's praying what, but we're praying that people be lifted up right now. They can change right now, and they can come up with a bright idea, right now. And everybody wants to do, for the most part. You see some people doing bad stuff, but for the most part, everybody's kind of joining together. They want to lift this thing and change this thing. So those are some thoughts with it, like how these big prayers can work. So North Korea, Kim Jong-un, the father, he, sometimes I had been leading the prayer group, even in the little things, to pray about this or pray about that. And then I finally thought, oh, let's just send blessings of Om. There's always something bad happening on this earth. Just send Om. Well, then when Kim Jong-un, the elder, said, oh, I'm going to blow up a nuclear bomb, I'm like, oh, for the love of Mike. Okay, you got my attention. And so we got our prayer group to go down to Hansa Temple and let's pray about this. So there's, I don't know how many of us there were, 10 or 20 people. And so we're praying, and he was like, what do you pray about this for this guy? But we just decided to pray for North Korea and to see Babaji as big as North Korea, and meditating lotus posture over North Korea, but not touching it. I wanted him to be above it, like 6 feet above it, lifting up the energy. So I didn't want him to strengthen North Korea in their error. I wanted them to lift it up. We did that, and at that point, I barely looked at the news. I would answer my emails, and it was in Yahoo. I'd see the headlines on the side, hardly ever click them. Because that night, it was like 11 o'clock at night or something, Kim Jong-un, or whatever his name, says sorry. I'm like, what? What dictator says sorry? Like, most guys don't even say sorry. And so I had to click on it. And so I clicked on it, and there's Kim Jong-un. He's like, standing next to this big, tall Chinese guy, and they're both like they just went to a party or a wedding or something. And I was like, oh my word. Because it just, and that felt like answered prayer, because it's like having Babaji over the whole country. I think it just lit up their chakras so much they couldn't do it. And, he said sorry about saying I was going to blow up the world, and they made some deal, and he never did it again. Because once you're caught saying sorry, you can't live that down, especially beaming. I've never seen him look so beaming, But then it's not like he was changed forever. He was changed in that moment. And then he picked his meanest son to follow him. So it's like, what is that? The tiger doesn't change. The leopard doesn't change its spots. But in that moment, everybody's got all 7 chakras. And sometimes you lift it up and they make a better decision. That's what I think happened there. But then his son did the same thing. It took a long time. And I did write a blog about that. When he said he was going to blow up the world, took a page out of Dad's book. Oh my word, here we are again. And I did a whole, you might have seen an arc of light between our 2 countries. Just trying to just visualize light, an arc of light. And the next thing we know, if he hadn't been Donald Trump, he would have got the Nobel Peace Prize for this. He goes over there and they sit first on the border and have tea. And we never heard about the nuclear bomb again. But I just like, oh, there's that arc of light. You just like work. Doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if you like the leaders or not. They all got all 7 chakras, and you're just going to work with what you're given, and you hold the light. So that's where I think where we go now with the whole system. Like, we can have our thought of what our perfect world would be, which would probably be like Satya Yuga. We'd probably really like that, even if we were at the bottom of the barrel in Satya Yuga. Here, we got to do our best to hold up the light because it's our job. It's like, and to not be surprised. Like, I think one thing Master Swami said is a lot of people on this planet are basically good, but they're not trying to be real expansive. There's not that many evil people, but there's also not that many aspiring to sainthood. However, a moment like this tends to, for the most part, lift people into their higher. They will try harder, or they might be thinking about life and death more and all kinds of stuff. It'll be a mixed bag. So all that to say, it's nice to have you pray. And it's also nice to sometimes have this bigger picture when everything seems a little kind of crazy. When does it all stop? When does the crazy part stop? But some other parts are remarkable. Like I say, like the earth healing, that's a miracle. I didn't know how we'd ever fix that. I hadn't seen a plan that was going to work on that. It was like, oh, just shut the world down for a while and it starts healing. So let's keep praying and let's keep being creative.